Welcome to the CCFR Radio Podcast, your source for news, updates, and stories from the CCFR.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 153 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. I'm your host, 𝐂𝐂𝐷, thanks for joining me again. Today is another supplementary podcast. Well, I think we only did one, which is this one. But we did the podcast last week. This is a supplementary one this week, so it'll be a little bit shorter than normal, and then we'll have the regularly scheduled podcast next week. So because it's kind of just a short episode, a little bit of an extra one, we're not going to have any sponsor announcements. I got to update those anyway. I haven't had time because I was in Ottawa all last week, as some of you may know. And also kind of a bonus coming next week is we're going to have a new theme song, very kind of similar to the one that we have. But, you know, it's funny, YouTube, it's really great that YouTube has a way of policing copyright. But the music that we use for the kind of insider information, the music that we use for the podcast was licensed through a service called AudioBlocks. And even though that the CCFR's YouTube channel is registered with AudioBlocks, and even though we've paid that subscription for like a decade, I every once in a while get a copyright dispute. And how that works, if you're not familiar with YouTube, but basically anyone, I don't know what the process is like because I don't do copyright disputes, like I don't dispute anybody else's copyright. But I guess you can just be like, yeah, that video is using my music. I want revenue from it. And you may have noticed that we don't monetize our YouTube channel. Like I think there's maybe a couple things monetized, but we don't, for the most part, monetize it because I don't need the hassle in censorship. I don't need copyright disputes. And I don't need people to be watching ads when we have important content for them. So while it would be a stream of revenue, we just don't do it. But if someone, so anyway, the reason I'm telling you this is if someone files a copyright dispute and it's upheld, you don't dispute it and provide evidence that you have the rights to use whatever copyright, they can have YouTube monetize your video. So they'll show ads and then they'll keep the money. And it's through the evolution of YouTube, now you have massive abuse where people just indiscriminately just accuse other people of copyright infringement through the YouTube system, and then if those people don't respond, they end up getting revenue off of those people's videos, right? So anyway, it's such a mess. So what I did was I wrote our own theme, very similar. I used to do that kind of stuff, I guess sort of semi-professionally. So anyway, I got a new theme song. And guess what? The CCFR owns it. So no more garbage with these copyright disputes when you actually pay for the license. So anyway, you might notice that next episode and you can comment on it if you want. Anyway, everything that we're going to discuss today, I'm going to discuss with Tracy Wilson on Skype. So let's get right down to it. All right, via Skype, we've got Tracy Wilson of the CCFR. Wilson!
There it is.
All right. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just got back from Alberta yesterday, and yeah, things are just as crazy as they are every other week. So.
I haven't seen you forever, like for days.
It feels like days since I've seen you.
Yeah, for sure. But we'll get into all that. This is a supplementary podcast, not the regularly scheduled one. This is just to kind of give you guys a quick update because there's so much going on right now. But even so, we've got a lot of stuff to cover, so we're going to get started right now. So the first thing we want to talk about is CCFR versus Canada. As you're probably all aware, Justice Kane of the Federal Court of Canada ruled against the CCFR and everyone else that was part of that case on every single grounds. And basically, it was a pretty scant decision when you read it, and just basically says, yeah, I agree with the government. You said this, the government said that, and I agree with the government on every single point of our application. And most of the other applicants were with us on many of our points, and some people were only there for one point at all. But it was a bit of a brutal ruling, so we've made the decision to appeal it to the Court of Appeal.
Yeah, that's right. So it's our opinion that the Justice Kane erred in her interpretation and application of the law. So yeah, we're going to take it to the appeals court. And at the end of the day, we promise gun owners that we leave no avenue unexplored nor a rock overturned. And we meant it. So we're going to keep fighting. And if we can't get a political solution in the meantime, then the courts is where a battle space is. So, yeah, we're going to keep fighting.
Yeah, well, some people have out there were like, oh, you guys are going to lose the whole time, or, whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, there's always a chance we're going to lose. And we're fighting the government and the judiciary, which are supposed to be a hedge on each other's power. But at the same time, it's like these people all sort of run in the same circles, right? So yes, it's difficult to get a ruling, especially if you're. Now, I don't want to prejudice anything, but to me, here's how it feels. And I was just complaining to this to our general counsel. It seems like when criminals are being defended, the courts come and they're like, oh, that's unconstitutional, that's against the charter. It's just like they get defended like crazy, right? And so these criminals walk free. And then when regular people are saying, well, that's that's not fair, and this, you guys clearly did not have the authority for this. It's like, nope, here's your story, here's the government story, I side with the government. It's like government rubber stamping. At least I don't know if that lines up with reality, but that's what it feels like.
Well, it does feel like that because you see so many cases where it almost feels like our legal system, I don't necessarily want to call it a justice system, but our legal system seems to protect and favor, kind of the underbelly of society. And here we are, just regular everyday Canadians who are being wronged by their government. And yeah, it's just getting the green light. So yeah, that's a problem for us.
Yeah, well, and the reason I brought it up is that, there's a good chance that we would lose. There was an equally good chance that we would win. There's an equally good chance that we'll win on an appeal. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that you don't do these things. Because when you are trying to make life miserable for people that are in government, that are doing terrible things to you for only purely political reasons, you have to fight them every single way that you can. You can't sit back and say, well, I'm not going to do that because it'll probably fail. I'm not going to do that because it'll probably fail. I'm not going to do this because they're going to side with their friend. Like, what are you going to do then? So yeah, we're doing the legal solution and we're pounding them. And anybody that's followed this case knows full well how hard we went on the government, probably unlike anything they've ever seen before, because normal people don't have the resources that we do as a community when we all stand together. But at the same time, we're working that political solution. We're going to talk more about that later when it comes to the Scrap C21 project. But we're hammering them politically and we're hammering them legally. And you got to do everything to make life as difficult for these people and make them think twice about doing more, That's right. Yeah. Anyway.
That's kind of key right there too. But somebody famous once said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So we're going to keep at it.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not intimidated by these people.
That's right.
So we made that decision to appeal and we announced it in a press conference when I was in Ottawa last week.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we've held multiple parliamentary press conferences in West Block, and we did so again last week while you were here. It's a really nice, tangible piece of evidence that we can point to when we want to, voice our opinion or our stance on or our position on a certain thing. So it was an opportunity for you to react to C21 and your testimony and your experience testifying before committee, as well as to officially announce. I mean, we had put it out on the socials and, maybe said a few things here and there, but this was sort of our official announcement that, yeah, we're going to appeal that decision. We believe it's wrong and we're going to keep going. So yeah, I really like doing those. Sometimes we get a lot of reporters. We've had 6 or 8 at some of them. And I think this time we had 1 or 2 in there, but yeah, there was some pressing questions for Mr. 𝐂𝐿𝐿. So yeah,
there was a few pressing questions. Unfortunately, I answered them all because I think she was directing them. It was a back and forth exchange, kind of a one-on-one, which I forgot about. And then next thing you know, she's like, she was done. And then there was no other questions. I'm like, I didn't get you to answer any. But
that's perfectly fine. You know what? You'd kind of been on a roll, and yeah, I don't. To me, it's about we need to put out the best message and do the best work that's possible for gun owners. It's not I'm not keeping score. Don't worry. I get my knocks in at the government all the time. So
yes, you do actually.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so of course I testified to the Senate. And that was pretty interesting. We're not going to show any clips in this episode just because we're going to save them all for the next one, and we'll have lots of fun. There's so many. Well, as predicted, we will have clips all the way through Christmas. But the Senate testimony went fairly well, and one of the things that I noticed is that the exchanges, I was ready for basically the same experience I had in the House Committee with Tlaib Nur Mohammed, that lunatic, and his crazy friend, Pam Damoff. Like the most abhorrent behavior, the most disrespectful behavior towards the people that elected them. And I was ready for that at the Senate because I did see a little bit of that in other testimony before I got there.
Right.
And so I was ready for literally everything. I prepared for that appearance that we didn't even get an hour. I think it was about 45, 50 minutes. And I prepared for 3 weeks for that because we were ready for some awesome clips there. But I was really surprised at how polite the tenor was, the tone, and how good the majority of the questions were.
Yeah. To me, it was really interesting because, I think, I was, in the days leading up to this, I was, we're doing a little role playing. I'm kind of throwing things at you, pretending to be, pretending to treat you the way you were treated by Tlaib in House Committee. And it's just good practice so that you've got your answers ready to go, right? And it was like totally unnecessary because for the most part, most of the questions were good and thoughtful and relative to C21. There was a few senators who, tried to meander down the path and try and, look at things that they were trying to discredit you with. But you were having none of it. And in fact, you did a really good job of sort of refocusing them back on what's important, regardless of what you think of our website or our stances or my mean tweets or any of these other, things that they're constantly picking at. That's not what you're there for. The taxpayers pay for these really expensive, fancy committee meetings so that you can study the legislation and talk about the impacts on Canadians. That's what the point is of being there. So asking you any other questions is actually irrelevant, and it's sort of offensive because that's not what that committee is for. It's to study that particular piece of legislation. So you did a really good job of keeping them, turning them around when they were starting to go down that path, and just say, hey, I'm here to talk about the bill, and that's what we're here to do, which is true and factual and very important.
Yeah, and you know what? One of the other things I just remembered while you were talking is that we had, what was it? It was Senator Kutcher. And he said, and we're going to show the clip. We'll talk about it again in the next episode, right? But you remember he was like, I've gotten, tons and tons and tons of letters, mail from gun owners. And I think he had said, all wanting them to watch the video that we produced.
Yeah, that's what he said.
Which is great, right? And everybody watched it, which is good. And it just shows that, because my position was take 18 minutes to find out what the position is of the CCFR and the 100,000 Canadians that support us, right? That's as big as some of the biggest unions in the country, right? So take that 18 minutes. I think you probably should do that as part of your job, and they did, which I was really happy about. And then he complained that he hadn't gotten a single letter in support of Bill C-21.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because somebody had put out, I don't know if it was Polly or somebody had put out a video about that. And I'm like, so wait a minute, you're being bombarded by people, Canadians, taxpayers, constituents, whatever you want to call them, who are opposed to C-21, who are affected by it, who are complaining about it. And not a single Canadian anywhere from coast to coast to coast wrote you to say, Senator, please support this bill. I don't know. Call me crazy, but maybe you should gauge the atmosphere in Canada by that.
Yeah,
right?
Read the room, bro. What does that tell you?
Well, and it's funny because then Polly will complain that, we're getting people to write in. And it's like, well, yeah, they're primary stakeholders. They're the very people targeted by this bill, not criminals, not gangbangers or gun smugglers. It's these licensed gun owners. So yes, they are directly impacted. Of course, they should write in or call in and voice their opposition. Like, I don't know. It's just silliness, right?
I know it is. It's pretty crazy. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. But we'll have lots of clips. We'll have lots of little stories from the road, stories from the Senate appearance and the press conference and the other stuff that we did in Ottawa. But when we put that up, what video was this? It was the SecD meeting that we put up on the YouTube channel. I was scanning some of the comments because when I do something like that, I mean, of course, I'm going to be like, well, I don't know how I did, because when you're there, it's very hard to, you got your mind is running 100 miles an hour to, make sure that you're, focused. You're listening to, the person that's talking. What is the question they're answering? And formulate your own answer instead of going off, into the wild, which is easy when you're not good at doing interviews or stuff like that. It's the easiest thing in the world, or where you find yourself, is going off talking about something else. Like that.
Oh, and it's so hard to come back out of that. Like once you've gone down that rabbit hole, right? It's like,
so it takes a lot of discipline, and a lot of energy. So I looked down when the video went up on our YouTube channel. I went and I looked at all the comments, and I found one that I really liked. That really, and it's pretty funny. It's lots of people just thank you so much for this or that. Or you did great or whatever, and thank you so much for those comments. I really appreciate that. But this one is the way that I see the world. So I want to read it for you.
Okay.
So Crawford Goodwin 3835, I think, is what that says. It says, like many have said before, thank you for representing me with such cool, calm, and rational tone. This is the part that I like. You don't get my donations and memberships. You earn them, and I'm happy to be a part of what supports you. And like, to me, and I actually responded to it. But to me, that's what it's all about. I don't want people to support me or to support you or the CCFR or what we do just because that's what they should be doing. I want them to say, well, these people are working their butts off every single day, and they're coming up with ideas that no one in the entire history of firearm advocacy ever came up with, much less had the will to do it. Like, just...
We want to earn it.
Yeah. Support us when we earn your support. Don't just be like, oh, you should be supporting these groups. It's like, I want to earn that. And I think if we all had that attitude, man, we get a lot done, right? So I really appreciate that recognition that we do work every day, and we are earning your support. We're not just asking for it.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, that triggered me for some reason. But
Rod's triggered.
I'm triggered. Anyway, tell us about a huge story that broke, really, really, really big. Actually, that's not getting near enough attention. But this is about the liberal buyback program and an ATIP that was filed by a reporter over at the National Post.
Yeah, so Bryan Passifiume from National Post put out this article, and it's interesting, because you'll remember all back through this whole thing since the beginning, since May 2020, when they did the big gun ban and then talked about their buyback confiscation program, which is what we should call it, a confiscation program. Bill Blair was, touting numbers for media and for the public of, that it's going to cost a little bit of money. It's going to be, between $400 and $600 million to do this buyback. Now, we all know that's completely, out to lunch. It'll be considerably more than that. And interestingly enough, this ATIP shows, and these are from documents back from 2019, a slideshow presentation that was provided to, I assume, the Department of Public Safety. And within there, it shows that it's actually, they estimated it would cost $1.8 billion. So, between 400 and 600 million, let's go halfway. $500 million to almost $2 billion. That's 4 times as much as what they told Canadians. So not only did Bill Blair outright lie to Canadians about how much this confiscation program was going to cost taxpayers should they ever do it, but he full well knew that. And to me, that's interesting, because not only did they sit on this information and keep it from Canadians, but these documents date back to 2019, before the tragedy in Nova Scotia. So they had this whole plan, and okay, we're going to ban a bunch of guns. Here's the guns we're going to ban. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to have a confiscation program. They had all of these plans made and laid out back in 2019, and then they sat on it, and they waited for an opportunity to surface where they knew it would get the most support. So what did they wait for? They waited for the Nova Scotia shooting. So you get a tragedy that happens, and Canadians are vulnerable, right? The whole country, you and I included, everybody was devastated with what happened in Nova Scotia. It was unimaginable. It was terrifying. It was tragic. Families and people and communities are destroyed from what happened. And it's like, oh, there we go. Let's drop it. And that's when they did the May 2020 announcement.
Yeah,
So,
well, and I mean, if it was
aside
all
from
about
the-
public safety, if it was such an emergency, a public safety emergency, why didn't they do it in 2019? They sat on it
They sat
and
on
waited
it.
to use that as a political chip.
Yeah.
So I mean, if I
Waited
were
for
if I
people
were
to die.
to speak on behalf of, from the perspective of their morals, then, you know, they risked public safety for whatever, a year before that, just sat on it and let the shootings continue and the victims cry for their, you know, the historic, you know, pain that they've suffered, all waiting for a way to throw that chip down for political reasons, to, you know, to help themselves to get reelected. You know?
Well, and that's why you'll remember too, during that time, there was a lot of talk and uproar over Bill Blair pressuring former RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki to provide him the information with what kind of guns the Nova Scotia shooter, I'm not going to say his name, but the Nova Scotia shooter used. Well, there's a reason for that, because he really, really needed him to have an AR-15 so that he could drop this ban, have it supported, and have it go through, right?
Well,
so
yeah, so it is interesting that an AR-15 shows up in that crime scene when an AR-15, I think, was ever used in 2 criminal shootings, like of an individual in Canada, in Canadian history. Anyway, that's weird. I guess it was quite a coincidence, and
just happened to be,
you know. And they not only did they sit on this program for, and you know what? If it's funny, because I was part of the Mass Casualty Commission effort, right? And they came out with recommendations that the AR-15 and all these other guns should be banned. And it's like, well, you know, and our question is, well, would that have stopped or even mitigated the Nova Scotia mass shooting, right? The spree shooting is
that
what
was
actually
the point
what
of
it
the
was.
MCC, yeah.
And they're like, well, yeah, yes, and it doesn't matter, right? Well, then why didn't they do it a year earlier? Maybe they could have prevented it. You know?
Well, and it wouldn't have had any impact because he didn't get his guns in Canada. He got his guns illegally smuggled, like pretty much everybody else who's doing violent
You're talking
shootings,
like a rational person. And when we're talking about the Liberals, there's no place for that.
Yeah.
So I need you to stop that immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. Rational, physical realities have no place in political talk. So.
Yeah. But going back to the story, though, you know, I'm upset that he lied to Canadians about the cost. They knew full well, you know, and even $1.8 billion, so $2 billion, even that is a very conservative estimate. And we all know that's like, you know, oh, the long gun registry only cost $2 million, $2 billion later. Like, it's insane, right? So we know it's going to blow way bigger than that to begin with, which is exactly what we've been saying all along. And we were, you know, called every name in the book by the antis for it. But the government themselves, the Liberals, knew full well this is going to be a multi-billion-dollar endeavor that taxpayers are on the hook for. You know, so how else can they get taxpayers to support this program? Is get them when they're vulnerable, get them when they're hurting, right?
Yeah, well, sit back and wait for a mass shooting. And then when the mass shooting is, roll it right out and lie about the cost, lie about all this stuff. Like Bill Blair.
It's tough, man.
is an absolute liar. And he can come and sue me if he wants. I'm right here. They know exactly where to find me. So that guy, man, does he lie a lot. And he's unflinching. Well, he flinches a lot. I think it's just whatever. He's got a tick or something. But he just, it does not even, I don't even know that he knows when he lies. He just
they lie
says
like they
whatever
breathe.
needs to be said at any given time for whatever he needs to do. But not only did they lie about the costs, that whole time, remember when they were doing the circuit after the shooting, when they rolled the buyback out, you know, and the gun ban out, he lied in probably every, I have to go back and look, right? But every time he mentioned a number, what they thought it would cost, it was a lie. And he knew full well it was a lie because he had that information in 2019.
Yeah. Well, and people accused us when we said, no, it's actually going to be billions of dollars, you know, to do this. I mean, not even just the cost of paying individual gun owners, but just the logistics, the administrative cost of doing a program this massive, 250,000 rifles from a country the size of Canada, it's insane, right? It's unimaginable, which is why I've always said I don't think it'll ever actually be able to happen. But like he full well knew the whole time and still, still stuck to that story. And people said, when we said, no, it'll be billions, people said, oh, the gun lobby is just, trying to inflate the numbers and they're trying to fluff the numbers.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's literally right in their documents.
Yeah.
They knew too.
Oh, yeah, they totally did. So not only did he lie about that, but then they interfered in the RCMP investigation of the largest spree shooting in the history of the country because they wanted to know the guns so they could push this thing, right? Which was just
and they did.
Incredibly just wow, like just immoral, like malevolent, just horrible, right? And they did that. And then and then Bill Blair and everybody, they all lied about doing that. On top of it, they lied about interfering for political reasons to make themselves, look good and to sell this buyback. They lied about that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just
I hope it was all worth it, Tim. I don't know. I couldn't sleep or live with myself, but we're not the same.
Yeah. These are some really bad people. Like some of the worst people there are. These are bad people. Anyway, enough about these people. Okay.
Yes.
So the most important solution right now is a political solution for all this. So we thought we would mention that we are shipping those posters. So if you participated in the Scrap C21 campaign and you got your gun store or your range to request posters that we would send for free, they are done. You have some with you, I think.
I do.
I'm going to put you full screen here.
Stand by. Let me back up here. These are big. So these are really nice size posters. I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Yep, you bet.
Yeah, so these are beautiful. These are free. We have them in English and French. I've got a French one right behind here. So Quebec, don't worry, we've got your back. But yeah, so if you don't know what these are for, maybe you've missed it and some time has passed or you missed that episode. But if you go to scrapc21.ca, you're going to find out how you can help fight against this bill, which of course encompasses that handgun freeze ban, they call it. But what's really important is there's a lot of Canadian gun owners or people who would be supportive of this, who maybe aren't on social media, who maybe don't watch podcasts, and we need to reach them too. So what does every single gun owner do? They go shopping. They go to the range. They go to the club. So get a hold of your favorite gun shop. If you own a store, contact us. Go to scrapc21.ca, scroll right to the bottom of the page, and there's a button there. Request posters. That's what it says. Click on it, fill that out, and I will personally send you these free. Ship them right to your door. So you can put them up in the store. If you're a gun club or a range, we'll send you a whole bunch. You can put them up in the different bays or wherever you can. And this will help engage people who maybe otherwise aren't online or whatever. It's got tons of information. It's wordy, but that's intentional. And of course, there's a QR code that they can scan if they've got a smartphone, and it'll take them to all that. But yeah, it kind of lets people know what's going on. And I think this is a really kind of a really simple way that we can get the message out to people who maybe otherwise wouldn't hear it for obvious reasons. So yeah, these are free. So just click the button on scrapc21.ca, request your posters, and I will personally get them out to you.
Awesome. Yeah. And the information that's on the poster is what the Liberals what they're doing and what they tried to do, because you can't forget about what they tried to do.
They'll try it again too.
They tried to ban single shot rifles. They tried to ban all the Mauser Sporters, the Parker Hale rifles, all these, bolt action. They tried to ban the SKS, everything, right? So anyway, you got to make sure that you know what they tried to do and you don't forget it when it comes time to take that one shot that you have every 4 or so years in the ballot box to make a difference. So, All right. Now, we'll wrap it up with the new store. We don't have any products to show you because we're just getting the last few produced now, but we have an all new store with all new products.
Yeah, that's right. So if you go to the CCFR.ca and go to the merch shop, you'll see it's been revamped. There's all kinds of new products on there. I've been down there looking at some of these hats and tees. The t-shirt material alone is completely different than that kind of tri-blend that we had before. These are really nice t-shirts and they're built to last. So we've upped the quality. We've upped the decoration on them. These are all private label. It's really, really nice stuff. And now that we brought the store in-house, I say store. It's not like a pretty retail store, if that's what you're picturing. It's a warehouse. But we've got a little warehouse. We've got some space there. And this way, the CCFR benefits a little bit more. The shop was successful before, but our profit off of that, or our ability to fundraise through it, was sort of limited. So that's changed a lot. There's all kinds of new stuff, and new stuff will continue to come out in the store. So always check back every now and then. Christmas is coming. There's no better way to show your support for the CCFR and get really cool gear for under the tree than going to ccfr.ca and hitting the merch shop. Yeah.
All right. That's awesome.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for your patience. I know we relaunched on November 1st, and it's been a little bit rocky. Some of our stuff's a little bit delayed getting decorated and that. We're going to have some growing pains for another week or two, and then never again. We'll be on track. So, I don't want to say never again, but we will be on track. The store will run smoothly. And from now on, you get little extras in your order, some little stickers, or there's little goodies that we'll put in there. So it's a better value for you and a better value for us.
Awesome. All right.
Yeah.
That wraps it up for the stuff that we have on our list. We'll be back next week with our regularly scheduled podcast and our TV show as well. You got this extra one because we need to get all this information done, and I need to do one next week to get back on that regular schedule because I do the TV show and the podcast at the same time. So you'll get a bonus one. We'll have lots of clips and we'll have lots of laughs because the anti-gunner Twitter feeds have been going crazy. And there's all kinds of clips to check out. So we're gonna have a good time on next Wednesday or next Thursday.
All right, we will see you then.
All right, that's going to do it for episode 153 of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Thanks everyone for watching the podcast. I really appreciate it. As you know, regularly scheduled podcast next week. Also, if you have friends that are gun owners and they're not watching the podcast or not following the CCFR on socials or something, tell them to try to follow one of our accounts or something. We have a wide variety of social media accounts, and they are all busy. There's tons of content on all of them. And it's really important because there's ways that they can participate in fighting against the government, fighting against this unprecedented attack on licensed gun owners, only licensed gun owners. So when we stand together, we're very powerful. When we're atomized and divided, we can just be swept aside by any government and media, right? It's very easy for them to do that. Hard for them to do that when we could do things like launching the big lawsuits and appeals and press conferences and being there to comment no matter where in the country that is, and all of the political stuff, the election advertising, the billboards, you name it. We can do these things, and I'm in that privileged position of being able to throw that weight around. I feel extremely privileged in that way. Why? Because we're all standing together. We're all contributing what we can, me included, contributing what we can to this fight. And man, we swing a big stick as a community, right? So anyway, that happens when we all participate together. So you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, YouTube, TikTok, Telegram, and we have a Discord server now. And that Discord server is for CCFR members only. You have to prove that you are a current member of the CCFR to get in there. I'm not a Discord guy, so I can't give you the details on that right now. Maybe if I remember, I'll jot that down and talk about it in the next podcast. But there's a lot of different ways that you can find out what's going on in our community, and it's really important that you stick with that. So, for example, you should know that you should be asking your club executive, did you contact the CCFR and order those posters and put them up on every single range at our club so that people know what the Liberals try to do and what they are doing, right? Stuff like that. We have the legal solution, as Tracy and I talked about, and the political solution. The political solution is the ultimate one for our fight, because in our system, as I mentioned, government can do whatever it wants. So if the Liberals can do whatever they want, the Conservatives can do whatever they want when they get elected too. So anyway, that's how we get our guns back. So anyway, one last thing I want to mention, when Tracy and I were writing down all the stuff to talk about in the podcast, she's looking through the comments because I was looking for that comment that I talked about, right? And she saw one and it was like, Rod looks really skinny or something like that. Is he okay? Or something like that. And I don't know if it was last podcast or the one before that I mentioned, yes, I have lost. Actually, it's up around 30 pounds I've lost in the last 3 months. So anyway, yeah, I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing great. don't worry about that. I just got to get out and buy some new shirts because this is one of this shirt used to be tight on me. So, I'm running out of those shirts that I wasn't able to fit in before. But as far as when I talked to you before about what I've been doing and how I lost all that weight in 5 weeks kind of thing, I'll try to do a CCFR sidebar, but that's extracurricular because we have so much going on right now. And but I'll find the time to do it, and then I'll tell you all about that on the side, not in the podcast. Anyway, thanks again, everyone, for watching. Take care, and we will see you next time.
This is another episode of the CCFR Radio Podcast. Remember, if you don't stand up for your own ability to own and use firearms, who will? Join the CCFR or donate right now at www.firearmrights.ca.